posting something because, well, I did some interviews in London, and it had to do with the work I do with respiration, and the the biggest thing came down to the differentiation between breathing and respiration, and why do I work with respiration and not breathing, and what's the difference, and why do you call it respiration, as in Respiratory Fitness, my company, and not breathing, and why don't you do breathing exercises like everybody else, and that sort of thing. And so I tried to explain to him, I just explained to him based on my past and what I've done and that sort of thing. And I've been involved with breathing since about 2007 was when I got started with the breathing sciences, which is the respiration. And I did it because a friend of mine in New York, a doctor friend, said to me, "Oh, there's something I think you'd be interested in, you'll be good at, and with your background." So I said, fine, and I started to look into it, and I went out and studied in Colorado, and one thing led to the next, and I was working with it with instrumentation and starting to learn about it and did a master's in it. But I hadn't a clue about breathing in a real sense, other than what everybody knows about it, that you breathe in, you breathe out, it's good for you, oxygen, this and that. But it was an integral part of my life from when I was a professional athlete. It was obviously an important factor to when I got involved in acting, and I was a professional actor, where then I seemed to apply it a lot more, because you'd be really nervous going into auditions, and what I did was I found myself trying to control the breathing and calm myself, because that was a natural kind of instinctive thing to do, and you always hear people saying, "Oh, relax, breathe, calm yourself," and so forth. So it was all relevant in the fields I was in, but I didn't have a clue about it really. Until I started working with the science and understanding it more, and realizing that there was a hell of a lot more to it than I ever really understood. So the point is that they were asking me about it, and why do you call it that? Because breathing is not really, breathing serves respiration, and that's what's really important to understand. Breathing and respiration are not the same thing, they're different. Respiration is basically reflexive. The body breathes and it does the respiration. The body controls the respiration and the breathing, and the body tells you when to breathe. So the breathing is a tool for respiration, and the breathing serves respiration so that your body is chemically balanced. It controls basically the pH in your blood plasma, and your electrolytes and kidney function, and all sorts of things. But the thing that was interesting was they couldn't understand why I didn't do breathing exercises. And there's this whole breath world out there now, breath workers they call it, or whatever. And they have all these techniques and exercises. But I end up working with people who do those things, and then they had problems afterwards, because the body's not meant to be told how to breathe. The body does it. And I'm not saying those things are bad. They're great to do different things. You do yoga, you do different kinds of breathing in holotropic breathing, and there's all sorts of uses for breathing in different ways. But a person has to understand that the breathing is mechanical, and the breathing exercise is something that could possibly disrupt the respiratory chemistry. It could compromise your respiration. And in that I mean that a lot of people end up taking over the breathing. Mostly it's unconscious. Mostly they never understand they do it, and they do it because of something that triggers it, something that happens in their life, or a trauma, or I don't know, they're afraid at some point and they change the breathing because it helps them adapt to it. things that people don't think about and don't realize and don't understand. Because breathing is breathing, and that's all people really see about it, and that's what they know. And then there's yoga and there's meditation, and I'm going to relax, and that's how breathing's associated. But breathing basically has such an impact on the body, and there's so many symptoms and problems that people acquire when their breathing gets compromised, but they don't understand it because they don't know about that. And the medical paradigm doesn't really know about it because doctors don't understand the psychology and the behavior. Yet a psychologist or a behavioralist doesn't understand the medical science and the physiology and the biology or the anatomy so much. So there's this gap, which is what I work in and which is what I was trying to say to these people. Respiratory fitness works within the gap of the medical sciences and the behavioral psychology, and it solves problems that neither of them can do because it takes the two of the fields and will take the medical science and will correct an issue that's been changed within the respiratory because of the breathing behaviors that people have learned to do, and correct that through behavior modification, and then they'll have breathing that is adapted and regulated by the body. I'm trying to get out there to people and find the words, the catchphrase, the something that's going to get people to say, oh, because there's a big difference and people don't get it. And you don't have to do breathing exercises for your health. You have to understand respiration. And if you understood respiration, you wouldn't have to worry about breathing exercises, or if you did any kind of breathing work, it would relate to the actual respiration and the science behind it, because understanding that is all you need to know for your health and for performance. I'm going to start posting stuff eventually more about, and I'll break down different aspects of this as it relates to performance and professional athletes, which is what I work with a lot. And as it relates to pregnancy and pregnant women, as it relates to basic health issues, chronic things that people never get properly addressed because the medical paradigm doesn't have answers for something that's chronic, because if it's chronic, they don't have an answer. That's basically what they're saying. So I'm talking about things like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and things like that, which people get. And those are basically coming out of a learned behavior, which is adapting the physiology and the breathing, and it's coming out of that for the most part. And then there's all sorts of other things. Toastmaster, public speaking, that's huge, and that relates to performance. I mean, when a person goes out to perform, they get nervous. Everybody gets nervous when you're going to go play a sport, when you're an athlete, when you're going to do a recital, when you're going to get on stage and do a musical, play the piano or something like that, or when you go up to do a speech in front of co-workers or a lot of people. You get nervous. You always get nervous. Butterflies. You're anxious. You're excited. You're all sorts of things. But what happens to some of the people is that triggers a change in what they do with their breathing because they've learned something somewhere. So now they're adapting their breathing based on this trigger, and now their breathing is completely off. So now there's no oxygen going to the brain, and there's no glucose, there's no nitric oxide, there's nothing going on that's helping the brain to function and do what it's supposed to do. So you can't do anything when you get up there. You can feel the red in your face, the heat. You don't even fathom the fact that this is something physiological that you could have learned to not end up doing, but you're up there doing that and worrying about that. But nobody understands this because this is a basic thing with the physiology. Anyway, I'm not going to go any further, but if anybody has any thoughts about this, because all those exercises and breathing stuff and everything out there is okay to a degree, but a lot of times it affects people in a negative way. And there's a whole lot of people out there who are not who have compromised their respiration and haven't a clue about it. They really don't know, because they don't know that that kind of a thing could happen. So it's really important